"Don't move, old man, I'm trying to get your good side." The kid's voice was high and mocking, cutting through the cold air of the shelter parking lot. Walter's hands trembled around the plastic grocery bag as three teenagers circled him, phones raised, screens glowing. At his side, Rusty, a small, scruffy brown mutt with nervous amber eyes, pressed against his leg, leash pulled tight, tail glued between his legs. "Look at the hobo and his dumpster dog," the one in the lifted truck laughed from behind his camera. "Tyler." His name was Tyler, and his daddy's money was sitting under him in chrome and mud tires. The engine idled loud, headlights drilling into Walter's tired eyes. "I don't want any trouble," Walter said quietly. His denim jacket was too thin for the November wind, but what bothered him more were those phones. He didn't understand TikTok or whatever they called it. He just knew they were laughing at him, not with him. Rusty whined, nudging Walter's hand with his nose. This parking lot had been the only place that ever felt safe since Walter adopted him from the shelter 3 months ago. Volunteers knew them. They saved leftover kibble, let Walter sit in the lobby when his apartment felt too empty. Tonight, though, the shelter was already closed, dark behind them. "Hey, watch this," Jaden said, stepping closer. He held something small and red between his fingers. Walter squinted. "What is that?" Tyler grinned into his phone. "Guys, smash that like button if you want me to spice things up." Jaden flicked his lighter. A tiny flame, then the evil hiss of a fuse. He tossed the firecracker under Rusty's paws. The world cracked open, a sharp explosion, bright flash. Rusty yelped, leaping sideways, the leash ripping from Walter's hand. Walter stumbled backward, his heel hitting the curb. Groceries burst from the bag as he crashed to the ground, apples rolling, a bottle of generic orange juice shattering, cold liquid soaking his jeans. The boys howled with laughter. Phones stayed locked on him. On the old man sprawled on the asphalt, scrambling on stiff knees, reaching for the trembling dog. Rusty crawled back to Walter instinctively, belly low to the ground, heart hammering. Walter's fingers sank into the dog's loose neck fur like a drowning man grabbing a life buoy. "This isn't funny," Walter rasped. His chest burned, old ribs protesting the fall. "You boys go on home." Tyler jumped down from the truck, sneakers squeaking on the wet pavement. He walked right up to Walter, the phone inches from his face. "Say hi to my followers, Grandpa. Give them a smile. Or maybe cry again. They love that." Walter turned his face away, cheeks burning with shame hotter than any firework. Rusty gave a low growl, soft but real, the first sound of defiance. "Ah, the trash dog's mad." Tyler lowered the phone toward Rusty. "What are you gonna do, huh?" Walter tightened his grip on the leash. "Leave him alone." Tyler smirked. "You gonna make me?" For a moment, the parking lot went completely silent. The street lamps hummed. Somewhere far off, a siren wailed. Walter thought about the photo on his dresser, a boy in a graduation cap, arms slung around his shoulder. His grandson. The one he hadn't called in over a year. The one he didn't want seeing him like this. Tyler stepped even closer, shoe nudging Walter's spilled groceries. "You know what? This video's kinda boring. Let's take it up a notch." He slid his phone into his pocket and reached behind his back, fingers curling around something tucked into his waistband. Jaden laughed. "Oh man, you're really gonna do it?" Walter's throat went dry as Tyler pulled the object free and pointed it straight at Rusty's shaking body. Walter froze. For a split second, all he saw was black metal and the memory of a muzzle from 50 years ago on a different continent, in a different war. His heart stuttered. Then his brain caught up. Not a gun. A cheap black plastic BB pistol, orange tip filed down. Rusty didn't know the difference. The dog yanked back, whining, leash cutting into Walter's palm. Tyler aimed at the ground right next to Rusty and fired. The crack echoed off the shelter walls. A pellet skipped off the concrete, stinging Rusty's paw. The mutt yelped, scrambling, claws scraping. "Stop it." Walter wheezed, trying to stand. "He's just a dog." "That's kinda the point," Tyler said, eyes bright with the thrill of an audience he couldn't see. "Dogs do tricks." He fired again, closer this time. Rusty barked in raw panic and bolted, the leash tearing through Walter's fingers. Pain lanced his arthritic knuckles. Walter lunged and grabbed at air. His knee buckled and he went down hard. His head clipped the curb, sending stars dancing across his vision. The boys roared with laughter. From the shelter's dark doorway, a light snapped on. "Hey!" a woman's voice shouted. "What's going on out there?" Tyler cursed under his breath. "Go, go." They piled back into the truck. Tires squealed as they sped away, leaving Walter sprawled on the cold asphalt. Rusty, instead of running, crept back toward him, belly low, pressing his head against Walter's chest as if apologizing for something that wasn't his fault. The shelter volunteer, Melissa, rushed out, phone in hand. "Mr. Hayes, are you okay? Oh my God, you're bleeding." "I'm fine," Walter muttered, pushing himself up. His fingers came away red from the back of his head. "Just kids messing around?" She'd seen enough to know it wasn't just kids. She helped him to the bench by the door, calling an ambulance anyway. Rusty stayed glued to his side, shaking. Hours later, after a brief ER visit and a bandage that made him feel ridiculous, Walter sat on his sagging couch in his tiny apartment. Rusty lay with his head in Walter's lap. The room smelled faintly of dog shampoo and old coffee. There was a knock at the door. His neighbor, Carlos, stood there, phone in hand, face tight. "Mr. Hayes, I think you need to see this." On the screen, under neon text that read, "When side quests turn into horror movies, face with tears of joy," there he was, Walter, falling, groceries exploding. Rusty yelping. Tyler's cackling voice. The caption, "Homeless grandpa and his demon dog." The comments were worse. Walter's throat closed. "How many people?" Carlos swallowed. "It's already over 100,000 views." Rusty whined, sensing the shift in him, nuzzling at his hand. Walter stared at the shaky video of his own humiliation, looped again and again. He thought of the grandson he hadn't seen since his wife's funeral. The boy who used to spend summers at this very apartment, who'd once promised, "Grandpa, when I'm a cop, nobody's gonna mess with you." He'd never told that boy he'd lost the house, that he was living off Social Security, that he spent most days volunteering at a dog shelter because it was the only place that didn't feel like an ending. Now the whole world could see exactly how far he'd fallen. Hundreds of miles away, in a cramped SWAT locker room, Sergeant Luke Hayes sat on a wooden bench, half into his tactical vest, when his teammate Marco shoved a phone in his face. "Bro, you gotta see this. It's messed up, but I swear this guy looks like you." Luke looked at the screen, an old man on cold pavement. A brown mutt. A kid with a fake gun and a real sneer. For a second, Luke's brain refused to connect the dots. Then Rusty looked up at the camera with those scared amber eyes, the same eyes Luke remembered from a photo Grandpa mailed him when he adopted this funny brown shelter dog. And the old man groaned, and that voice. "Grandpa," Luke whispered. His chest constricted. The locker room noise faded into a dull roar. The last words he'd said to Walter were a year ago, sharp and impatient. "I can't come down this weekend, I'm on call. I'll visit when things calm down, okay?" Things never calmed down. Not for SWAT. Not for guilt. "What did you say?" Marco asked. Luke's jaw snapped shut. He stood, shoving his gear into his bag. "Where are you going?" Marco called after him. Luke's eyes burned as he slammed his locker. "Home," he said. "I'm going home." If you want to know how this story ends, subscribe to the channel and don't miss the next chapters. Things are only just starting to heat up. The highway lights smeared into yellow streaks across Luke's windshield as he drove, knuckles white on the steering wheel. The video kept replaying in his mind, each frame a punch. Walter on the ground. The dog. The laughter. He'd seen worse in 12 years with the tactical team. Raids gone sideways, barricaded suspects, overdoses. But seeing his grandfather like that grabbed some raw place inside him that body armor couldn't touch. His phone buzzed in the cup holder. "Mom." He hit speaker. "Yeah. You saw it," she said softly. Not a question. Luke exhaled. "Yeah. He didn't want me to call you. Said you were busy with important people." There was no accusation in her voice, which somehow made it worse. "He's okay. Banged up." They glued the cut on his head. "But, Luke, he's ashamed." "I'm 20 minutes out," Luke said. "Is he home?" "Yes, but..." He hung up before she could tell him to calm down, to let local police handle it. He knew how that went. Kids with rich parents. Boys being boys. A viral video turned into just a prank. He'd seen that too. Walter's apartment complex hadn't changed much, except the paint looked cheaper. Luke jogged up the stairs, boots thudding, heart pounding in a way it never did before a raid. He knocked, suddenly terrified his grandfather wouldn't open the door. That he'd hear his voice and decide he didn't want him there. The door eased open. Walter stood there in a faded plaid shirt, a white bandage peeking from his gray hairline. Rusty's head pushed through the gap first, nose working, tail cautiously wagging. For a long second, neither man spoke. "You drove all this way on a weeknight," Walter said finally, eyes shining. "Didn't know they let heroes off duty." Luke flinched at the word hero. "Hi, Grandpa." He stepped forward. Walter's hug was bony and awkward and perfect. Rusty wriggled between them, insisting on being part of the reunion, paws on Luke's thighs. "So you're Rusty," Luke murmured, scratching the dog behind the ears. "I've seen you online." He tried to make his voice light, but it came out strained. Walter's smile faded. He shuffled back into the small living room. "You saw that?" Luke followed, taking in the sagging couch, the TV balanced on cinder blocks, the neatly stacked pill bottles. How had he not known things were this tight? "I'm sorry," Walter blurted, wringing his hands. "I should have watched where I was going. I shouldn't have talked back to those boys. They were just kidding around." "Stop." Luke's tone was sharper than he intended. "They weren't kidding. That was assault. On you and on him." He nodded at Rusty, who'd curled protectively against Walter's leg. Walter stared at the floor. "Police already came. Took a statement, said they'd look into it. Those boys' families own half this town. I don't want trouble." Luke thought of the BB gun, the filed tip, the way Tyler's finger rested on the trigger like he'd done it 100 times. "You already have trouble," Luke said quietly. "I just came to move it off your doorstep." The next morning, Luke walked into the small-town police station in jeans and a plain hoodie. He still moved like SWAT though, eyes tracking exits, shoulders squared. Rusty trotted at his heel, wearing a cheap blue harness Walter had saved up to buy. The desk sergeant glanced up. "Can I help you?" Luke laid his badge on the counter, not flashing it, just setting it down. The embossed letters Metro Tactical Unit did the talking. "I'm here about the assault on Walter Hayes. And I want to see the incident report." 15 minutes later he was in a cramped office with the chief, a thick-waisted man with a gray mustache and a polite smile that never reached his eyes. "We're working the case," the chief said. "Believe me, we don't take this lightly." Luke scrolled through his phone. "Then you've already seen this." He hit play. Tyler's voice filled the room. The BB gun. Walter falling. The chief winced. "Look, off the record, those boys are idiots. But their parents are litigious. They'll say your granddad provoked them. There's no serious injury. Best we can hope for is some community service, maybe a public apology." "An apology video," Luke said flatly. "More content." Rusty gave a low growl from under the chair, picking up Luke's tension. The chief raised his palms. "Sergeant Hayes, I respect what you do. But you know how this works. We've got limits." Luke's phone buzzed. A notification from an unknown account, "Crazy old guy and his dog live tonight, Part 2. Attached was a screenshot of the same parking lot, same truck, time-stamped for midnight. Luke's blood ran cold. He turned the screen toward the chief. "Then you'd better find new limits. Because they're not done." The chief frowned. "Could be fake. Kids posting old photos." "No," Luke recognized the shadows, the wet shine of the pavement, tonight's forecasted rain. And the caption, "Gotta finish what we started." He stood, pocketing his badge. "Whether you're there or not, I will be." Rusty's ears pricked as if he understood. Outside, rain began to tap against the station windows. And in a lifted truck across town, Tyler grinned at his phone, not realizing the man in his comments who just typed, "I'll see you there" wasn't another fan, but a SWAT officer with a brown mutt and a score to settle. By 11:30, the shelter parking lot was a sheet of wet asphalt under flickering lights. Melissa had double-checked every lock twice before leaving, uneasy without quite knowing why. The storm cloud swallowed the moon, leaving the lot in a dim, yellowish gloom. In the shadows across the street, Luke sat in his unmarked SUV, engine off, rain drumming on the windshield. Rusty stood with his front paws on the center console, staring out like he was on surveillance too. "You remember this place, huh?" Luke murmured, scratching the dog's chest. Rusty's ears twitched. His body was relaxed, but his eyes were alert. Luke had texted the chief his plan. "I'll be parked nearby. The kids show, I'll call it in. Let your units make the stop." No response yet. Maybe the man was hoping the whole thing would blow over. Luke checked his watch. 11:42. His radio, patched to his city unit in case of emergencies, crackled to life. "All teams stand by, possible barricaded suspect, Maple Towers Apartments." "Sergeant Hayes, you on?" He closed his eyes for half a second. Maple Towers was 20 minutes away. His team needed him. They were good, but they moved best together. And this was a maybe. A what if kids show up to be stupid in a parking lot? He thumbed the mic. "Hayes here. Send details." As the dispatcher relayed the situation, shots fired, unknown injuries, Luke's jaw clenched. He'd once missed a call like this and a rookie took a bullet that should have been his. He still saw the kid's face in every nightmare. Duty versus blood. Rusty whined softly, sensing the shift in him, resting his chin on Luke's forearm. Luke made the call. "You had to." "Copy. I'm en route," he said into the radio. He grabbed his keys. "We'll swing back, buddy," he told Rusty, more to convince himself than the dog. He drove away, headlights cutting through the rain, the shelter shrinking in his rearview mirror. 2 blocks later, his phone buzzed with a notification. A live stream had started, Part 2, Grandpa and Dog Midnight Special. Viewer count ticking up. Luke swore under his breath. Come on. He couldn't be in 2 places at once. But he could stack the deck. He called the chief again, this time not bothering to hide the steel in his voice. "They're there now. Get a unit to the shelter. If something happens to that old man or that dog because you sat on your hands..." "We're sending a car," the chief cut in, sounding suddenly wide awake. 10 minutes out. Sometimes 10 minutes was forever. At Maple Towers, the barricaded suspect turned out to be a drunk guy who'd fired a gun into his own ceiling and passed out. SWAT contained the scene in record time. No casualties. No heroics. Just a mess of broken sheetrock and bad life choices. Luke's phone buzzed the entire time in his pocket. When they cleared the building, Marco clapped him on the shoulder. "You're somewhere else tonight, man? Go. We've got cleanup." Luke didn't argue. He sprinted back to the SUV, Rusty hopping excitedly in the back as if sensing they were going somewhere important. Rain had turned to a steady downpour, blurring streetlights into halos. He opened the live stream with one hand as he drove, phone propped in the console. The image jittered, teen laughter, headlights sweeping over familiar kennels. A voice shouted, "Yo, is the old dude here tonight?" Another replied, "Who cares? Let's see if the demon dog wants to play." Rusty stiffened, a growl rumbling in his chest at the sound of Tyler's voice through the tinny speaker. Luke pressed harder on the gas. Wipers beat faster. The speedometer crept up. On screen, someone kicked at the shelter's front door. Another teen pointed the camera toward the side gate where volunteers walked dogs during the day. The padlock glistened with rain. "Bet I can jump it," Jaden bragged. Viewer comments poured up the screen, laughing emojis, skulls, "Do it Bureau," and one lone line that made Luke's skin crawl, "Make the dog scream again." His phone buzzed with an incoming call. Unknown number. He answered without taking his eyes off the road. "Yeah. This is Chief Daniels," the voice on the other end said, engine noise in the background. "My unit got delayed at a crash on Route 7. We're still 10 minutes out." Luke's fingers tightened on the wheel. On the live stream, the camera swung wildly as the boys hopped the gate, landing inside the fenced yard among the dark shapes of sleeping kennels. "You're out of time, Chief," Luke said. "I'm 3 minutes away. Sergeant Hayes, don't do anything that puts you..." Luke hung up. Rusty stood now, braced against the back seat, ears up, body vibrating with tension. He didn't understand words like jurisdiction or liability. He understood fear in the voices on that phone and the familiar smell that would be waiting at the shelter. The live feed shook as the boys moved between kennels, tapping bars, waking dogs, filming their panic. "Where's the brown one?" Tyler demanded. "The demon. We're giving the internet a sequel." A notification flashed across the stream. Luke _87 has joined. The camera paused, zooming on the username. Tyler laughed. "Looks like Grandpa's got fans now." On the other end of town, red and blue lights flickered to life on Luke's dash. He floored it, siren wailing as rain-slick streets whipped past. And as the SUV fishtailed into the shelter's driveway, the last thing he saw on the stream was the camera whipping toward a shape in the darkness. An old man's silhouette at the corner of the building, Rusty at his side as the boys closed in. The SUV skidded to a stop, tires spraying water. Before the engine fully died, Rusty launched himself toward the door, claws scratching at the panel. "Stay," Luke ordered automatically, but his own body was already moving, boots splashing through puddles as he sprinted toward the side yard. Rain hammered the chain-link fence, turning everything into a blur of silver lines and shadows. He heard it before he saw it, Rusty's bark, sharp and furious, nothing like the frightened yelps from the video. "Back off, old man." Tyler's voice cracked with something that wasn't quite bravado. "We're just filming." Luke reached the gate and saw the scene through the mesh. Walter standing awkwardly between the boys and Rusty, one hand out as if he could physically push back their cruelty with the force of his will. Rusty was planted at his heel, teeth bared, fur standing up along his spine, body quivering. Tyler held the BB gun again, pointed straight at the dog. The other boys flanked him, phones raised, screens white against the dark. A comment floated up the live feed on Luke's phone, still running in his pocket. Shoot it, bro. Luke climbed the fence in 3 moves, landing inside the yard with a thud. Drop it, he barked, voice slicing through the rain. All 3 teenagers spun around. For a heartbeat, their faces were just kids' faces, wet, startled, suddenly very small without the distance of a scream. Then Tyler sneered. Who the hell are you? Luke stepped forward, every inch of SWAT training in the way he moved. Calm, controlled, lethal if needed. I'm the guy you've been making content about. Walter blinked at him. Luke? What are you? Grandpa, stay behind me, Luke said without looking back. His eyes stayed on the BB gun. Even plastic could take an eye out at this range. And the way Tyler's finger twitched on the trigger told Luke he didn't fully grasp the line he was about to cross. Rusty recognized him now, whether by smell or voice or sheer relief, Luke couldn't tell. The dog's growl softened just a fraction, body angling so he was half guarding Walter, half pressed toward Luke. Tyler laughed, but it wobbled. Oh, what, you're gonna arrest us? With your dog? This isn't Call of Duty, dude. Luke took another step. Last chance. Put the gun down and maybe you walk away with a warning and a very long talk with your parents. Jaden shifted uneasily. Ty, maybe we should bail. Cops are probably... Tyler cut him off. Shut up. It's not even a real gun. He can't do anything. He's not a cop here. Luke smiled without humor. You want to test that theory? Rain plastered his hoodie to his body. His badge burned cold in his pocket. He could feel Walter's eyes on his back, filled with a complicated mix of pride and fear. The boys had an audience though. Luke knew that. Phones were still up. The viewer count on the live stream ticked into 6 digits. Somewhere out there, a chorus of anonymous strangers waited to see what happened. To see if cruelty would win again. Tyler squared his shoulders, raising the BB pistol a fraction higher. Say something for the camera, Grandpa, he taunted, eyes flicking past Luke to Walter. Maybe cry this time. People love that. Rusty lunged, reaching the end of his leash with a vicious snap of teeth. Walter's grip held just barely. Luke's voice dropped, quiet but razor sharp. You point that at my dog again and I will personally make sure every second of this video is Exhibit A when you're explaining yourself to a judge. And I know exactly how to make that happen. Your dog. Tyler scoffed. Thought it was the old man's mutt. Luke's gaze didn't waver. He's ours. That means he's got more backup than you can imagine. Blue lights suddenly flashed at the edge of the lot as a patrol car swung in, siren chirping once. Doors slammed. 2 uniformed officers jogged toward the gate, hands on their holsters, eyes scanning. Jaden swallowed hard. Dude, we gotta go. Tyler hesitated, eyes darting between the approaching officers, Luke, Walter, and the camera in his friend's hand. The weight of the moment settled on his shoulders, not understanding all the consequences but feeling them pressing in. Then he did the dumbest possible thing. He turned the gun back toward Rusty and pulled the trigger. There was a crack, a yelp, and a blur of brown fur as Rusty lunged off his paws, and in the chaos of rain and shouting and flashing lights, something far worse than a viral joke detonated in the middle of that muddy fenced-in yard. The crack of the pellet and Rusty's yelp hit Luke at the same time. The dog leaped forward on instinct, teeth closing around the nearest threat, Tyler's wrist. Tyler screamed, high and panicked, the BB pistol flying from his hand and skittering across the mud. Blood welled in a neat crescent where Rusty's teeth had broken skin. Phones jerked, cameras whipping wildly, rain turning everything into chaotic streaks of light. Gun. Gun, one of the arriving officers shouted, seeing only a dark shape on the ground and a dog lunging. His hand flew to his holster. Luke moved before he could think. Don't you draw on that dog, he barked, voice cutting through the storm. He stepped between Rusty and the officers, one palm out, the other pointing to the plastic pistol. It's a BB. Plastic. Stand down. Rusty released Tyler the instant Luke shouted, retreating back to Walter's side, shaking from nose to tail, lips still curled. Walter clung to the leash, knees wobbling. Officer Perez, young and wide-eyed, froze halfway through the motion of unsnapping his holster. He bit the kid. Luke's voice dropped an octave. He got shot again and protected his owner. That's what he did. He nudged the BB gun with his boot, flipping it so the filed-down orange tip was clearly visible. You see this? This is why real cops get killed. Tyler cradled his wrist, face pale under the drizzle. He's crazy. That dog just attacked me for no reason. I'm bleeding. Keep rolling, Jaden, Tyler hissed at his friend through clenched teeth. Get his face. He threatened me. Jaden's phone shook in his grip. For the first time, guilt flickered there. Ty, maybe we should. Turn it off, Perez snapped, stepping toward them. All of you. Now. Blue strobes painted everyone in the same harsh light. Another patrol car pulled in, Chief Daniels climbing out, rain flattening his gray hair. He took one look at Tyler's wrist, at Rusty's defensive stance, at Luke's squared shoulders, and sighed like a man who felt a migraine arrive. What the hell happened here? Luke held his gaze. What happened is you didn't get here in time. Tyler jabbed a finger at Rusty. That dog needs to be put down. He's dangerous. And this guy, he nodded at Luke, he threatened me. I've got it on video. Chief Daniels' eyes flicked to Luke's pocket where the outline of his badge showed through wet denim. Sergeant Hayes, we're past friendly advice. You're out of your jurisdiction and off duty. I'm a grandson, Luke shot back. And an eyewitness. Daniels rubbed his temples. We're going to sort this out at the station. Everyone, including the dog. Animal control will have to be notified after a bite. Walter's breath hitched. You can't take him. He was just scared. He saved me. Sir, it's procedure, Daniels said not unkindly. Temporary hold. Observation. Rusty pressed against Walter's leg like he understood every word. Luke stepped closer, jaw clenched. If anyone puts their hands on him tonight, they answer to me. Tyler's lips curled into a thin, satisfied smile despite the blood on his arm. Good. Because my dad's a lawyer. And when he's done, you won't have a badge to flash at anyone. Lightning flickered overhead as the chief turned toward his car to call animal control, and in the glow of the dashboard, Luke glimpsed the digital clock ticking forward, toward a deadline he hadn't known existed until that moment. By dawn, the parking lot looked like nothing had happened. Just wet pavement, muddy paw prints, and a stray plastic cup rolling in the breeze. The only proof of the chaos was on people's screens. Two videos battled for control of the story. On one side, Tyler's edited clip already viral. It started with Rusty biting, looping that moment over and over, Luke's shout cut to sound like a threat. The caption, Psycho dog and cop attack innocent teens. On the other, a shaky upload from an anonymous account, clearly ripped from the original livestream. It showed everything. The firecracker. The BB gun. Walter's fall. And finally, Rusty yelping and lunging only after being shot. Comments flooded both. Some laughed. Some demanded Rusty be euthanized. Others wrote, justice for Walter, and that dog did what any of us would. In Walter's cramped living room, the TV was off. He sat hunched at the kitchen table in the same shirt from the night before, coffee gone cold in his hands. Rusty lay at his feet. No had lain there. The phantom weight of the dog's head haunted his ankles. Luke paced, phone pressed to his ear. He's a working dog in everything but official paperwork, he argued. Defensive bite, clear provocation. There's no way a judge. The animal control director's voice crackled through the line. Sergeant, I respect what you do. But the report we got says, unprovoked attack on a minor. And until the investigation's done, the dog stays in quarantine. Standard 72 hours. Quarantine where? Luke demanded. In our facility. We'll keep him safe. Luke thought of Rusty alone in a concrete kennel with the word dangerous stamped on his chart. I want access. Daily. And he gets a muzzle after a behaviorist sees him, not before. Pause. You're not in charge here, Hayes. Watch me, Luke said and hung up. Walter stared at the table. It's my fault, he murmured. If I hadn't gone out there last night? Don't do that, Luke snapped, softer a second later. They went looking for you, Grandpa. They announced it to half the internet. A car door slammed outside. Heavy steps in the hallway. A sharp knock. Luke opened the door to find a man in a tailored suit, hair perfectly in place despite the wind. Tyler's father. 2 steps behind him, Chief Daniels looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. The lawyer extended a card without a smile. Richard Morrison. We spoke by email, Sergeant Hayes. I'm here to inform you that my son is pressing charges. Assault. Intimidation. And that we're filing for a dangerous dog designation on that mutt. Walter flinched at the word mutt. Luke didn't take the card. Your son shot my dog and terrorized my grandfather for views. You mean the man who's now the face of a harassment campaign against my child, Morrison said smoothly. He's getting death threats because some people think he deserved to be bitten. That's on you and your followers. Chief Daniels cleared his throat. Let's keep this civil. There's going to be a hearing regarding the dog. 3 days. Animal Control Board. Everyone tells their side. Morrison smiled at Walter like he was addressing a slow student. You might want to start saying goodbye to the animal. Dogs that bite, especially owned by unstable seniors, rarely get a second chance. Rusty's empty leash hung on a hook by the door. Walter stared at it, then at Luke, eyes wet. He didn't bite out of meanness, he whispered. He was scared. Luke stepped forward, putting himself between Morrison and his grandfather. We'll be at your hearing, he said calmly. And I'll make sure the whole video plays. Every second. Morrison's expression hardened. You do that. Just remember, you're not the only one who knows how to use a courtroom. He turned and walked away, shoes clicking down the hallway like a countdown. Chief Daniels lingered. Hayes, off the record, sit this one out. I's already sniffing around. If you make noise online, they'll come harder. Luke looked at the old man by the table, at the empty patch of floor where Rusty should have been. With respect, Chief, he said, voice flat, if fighting for my family costs me a badge, maybe I'm overdue to find out who I am without it. Daniels sighed and left, closing the door with a soft click. Walter's hands trembled around his coffee cup. 3 days, he whispered. What if they decide, what if they... Luke pulled out a chair and sat, leaning in. His eyes were tired, but there was a steady fire there now. Then we don't give them the option, he said. We change the story before they ever walk into that room. And somewhere across town, in a row of steel cages that smelled of bleach and fear, Rusty lifted his head at a distant sound. A door opening, footsteps coming closer, not knowing yet if they meant a new friend, or the end of everything he'd finally found. The animal control facility was all echoes and disinfectant. Rusty pressed himself against the back of his kennel, ears flat, as a metal door clanged shut somewhere down the row. Dogs barked in frantic bursts, then quieted. He remembered this smell. The shelter had been kinder, full of soft voices and treats. Here voices were brisk, footsteps hurried. A clipboard appeared outside his door, the pen scratching, bite case. Hold. Review in 72 hours. A young tech with tired eyes paused. Hey buddy, she murmured, slipping a biscuit through the bars. Rusty took it gently, tail giving a tentative thump. She glanced at the form. Name's Rusty, huh? Dangerous, my butt. Across town, Luke sat hunched over his laptop at Walter's kitchen table. Phone, tablet, and printed screenshots were spread like evidence on a briefing board. Marco's voice crackled over speakerphone. You're really going to war with a rich lawyer and go viral doing it? Luke replayed the original stream again, finger tracing timestamps. I'm not the one who live broadcasted a crime. I'm just amplifying reality. He'd already quietly contacted a friend in cybercrimes, who'd scraped Tyler's deleted videos from backup servers. A dozen clips of pranks on homeless folks, waitresses, gas station clerks. Laughter over other people's fear. Marco whistled as each file loaded. This kid's a walking exhibit list. Luke uploaded a compilation. No commentary, no music, just dates, times, and behavior. He titled it simply, What They Didn't Show You. He blurred faces except Tyler's and added one caption at the start, Judge for yourself. Within an hour, views climbed. Comments shifted. People stitched the video with their own stories of being humiliated for content. A local journalist DM'd Luke asking for an interview. At the same time, Tyler's father pushed back. His legal statement hit the town Facebook group. My son is the victim of a coordinated harassment campaign led by an out-of-town SWAT officer abusing his platform. Walter read the post aloud, voice shaking. They're saying you threatened to sick Rusty on him. Luke's jaw flexed. They're saying whatever they think will stick. A new notification popped up, a private message from an unfamiliar account. I was there that night. I have the whole live saved. I'm sorry. Attached was a phone number and the name, Jaden. Luke hit call. The teen's voice on the other end was small, stripped of bravado. I didn't think it'd go that far. Ty said it was just jokes. When your dog bit him, he freaked out and told me to cut the beginning before we posted. You kept a copy, Luke said. Yeah. I don't sleep right about it. I'll tell whoever you want what really happened. But Ty's dad said he'll ruin anyone who turns on them. Luke glanced at Walter, who was pretending not to listen, fingers tracing the rim of his mug. Let me worry about his dad, Luke said. You just tell the truth at the hearing. There was silence, then a shaky, okay. That evening, as rain streaked the apartment window, Chief Daniels called Luke to the station. The mood in his office was heavier than before. Internal Affairs saw your upload, the chief said, sliding a paper across the desk. You went public with an ongoing case. You put on your SWAT jacket and half your old photos. They think you're leveraging the badge. Luke stared down at the form. Suspension pending review. So that's it, he said softly. I try to protect my family and I lose the job I used to protect everyone else. Daniel's expression almost cracked. You might get it back. Or you might not. But regardless of this, he tapped the paper, there's still a hearing in 2 days. You show up there, you're not Sergeant Hayes. You're just Luke. Remember that. Luke signed, the pen digging into the paper harder than necessary. When he stepped back into the hallway, the air felt thinner. Outside, Walter waited in the truck, hands folded over the brim of his cap. Bad news? He asked. Luke stared at the dark parking lot, the reflection of his own tired face in the windshield. They benched me, he said. But that just means I don't have to ask permission anymore. Walter studied him. You're sure this is worth it? For an old man and a street mutt? Luke swallowed, feeling every mile between who he'd been and who he was now. Those are the only fights that ever were, he said. And in his kennel, Rusty shifted in his sleep, dreaming of the shelter yard, of Walter's hands, of Luke's voice calling his name, unaware that somewhere, a clock on a bureaucrat's wall ticked closer to a decision about whether he would ever feel those things again. The hearing room at City Hall looked more suited for zoning disputes than life-or-death decisions. Fluorescent lights buzzed. A row of folding chairs creaked as people shifted. At the front, 3 board members sat behind a long table, nameplates slightly askew. A dozen townsfolk had shown up. Shelter volunteers, a clerk from the grocery store, Melissa with her hair still wet from morning chores. On the other side of the aisle, Tyler and his father sat in crisp clothes, a bandage wrapped neatly around Tyler's wrist. A sleek tablet lay on the table before them. Walter tugged at his only tie, feeling the knot choke him. Luke sat beside him in a plain shirt, his suspended badge left at home. Rusty wasn't allowed in. He waited in a kennel across town, his fate being discussed without him. The chairwoman cleared her throat. We're here to determine whether the dog known as Rusty should be designated dangerous, and if so, what disposition is appropriate. Disposition? Walter whispered. Like he's garbage. Sir? Luke murmured. Nothing, Walter said, swallowing hard. Morrison rose first, voice smooth. He painted a picture of good kids harassed online, of a vicious animal that attacked without provocation, of a grandfather unsteady and confused who couldn't control his pet. He played Tyler's edited clip on the tablet, projecting it on a small screen. Gasps rippled as the bite looped again and again. Please note, Morrison said, my client never raised a hand to this dog. The animal simply snapped. Luke stood when called, hands clasped behind his back out of old habit. He asked the board to play the full stream. Morrison objected. The chairwoman, tired of half-truths, allowed it. On screen the story changed. Firecracker. BB gun. Walter's fall. The taunts. Rusty's shaking body. Shot, yelp, lunge. The room went very quiet. Rusty did what any trained protection dog would do, Luke said. Except he's not trained. He's just loyal. He bit the hand holding a weapon pointed at his person. Then he let go the second I called off. Morrison scoffed. You're not a behaviorist, Mr. Hayes. You're a suspended officer with an axe to grind. Luke didn't rise to it. You're right. I'm not a behaviorist. He turned to the audience. But she is. Melissa stood, cheeks pink. I've worked with shelter dogs for 8 years, she said. Rusty's scared of loud noises, but he's gentle. I've seen toddlers climb on him. He flinches from raised voices, not toward them. One board member frowned. And the bite. Guarding under threat, she said simply. If you kill every dog that reacts like that, you're killing the best of them. The door at the back opened with a squeak. Jaden slipped in, hoodie up, eyes down. He went straight to the front when the chairwoman called his name, hands trembling as he was sworn in. Is it true you filmed the incident? Luke asked gently. Yeah, Jaden muttered. Ty told me to cut the beginning. He said it'd make him look bad if people saw the firecracker. Or the BB gun. Did you think Walter or Rusty were a threat to you? Luke pressed. Jaden swallowed. No. We were messing with them. For views. His voice broke. It wasn't supposed to. I didn't think Rusty would get taken away. Morrison leaned forward. Young man, are you aware my client's arm required 8 stitches? Jaden winced. If he hadn't shot the dog again? Enough, the chairwoman said sharply. She turned to Walter. Mr. Hayes, do you have anything to add before we recess? Walter stood slowly, every joint protesting. He didn't look at the lawyers, only at the board. I fought in a war a long time ago, he said quietly. Saw men do terrible things and walk away from them. When I came home, I promised myself if I ever saw someone smaller being hurt for fun, I'd stand between them and the hurt. His hand shook as he gripped the back of his chair. That dog, he's the first thing in a long time that made this old place feel like home again. He's not dangerous. He's just the only one who listened when a bunch of kids decided my life was a joke. He looked down the room at Tyler, whose eyes darted away. You scared him. He protected me. I'm asking you not to kill him for that. The chairwoman nodded, face unreadable. We'll break for 30 minutes to deliberate. As the board filed out, murmurs rose. Some people glared at Tyler. Others whispered to Luke. Walter sat heavily drained. Luke checked his watch. 30 minutes for 3 strangers to decide if Rusty walked out into sunlight or never saw it again. He felt more helpless than he ever had behind a ballistic shield with bullets flying. And somewhere across town, a kennel worker folded Rusty's chart back onto its hook, eyes lingering on the red stamp. Review pending, trying not to think about the alternative stamp in the bottom drawer, the one that only came out when the clock ran down and the answer was no. The board members filed back in with the solemn faces of people about to make someone very unhappy. The room hushed, even the buzzing lights seemed to dim. Walter's hands were clasped so tightly his knuckles were white. Luke sat beside him like a coiled spring, every muscle remembering raids where a yes or no determined who lived. The chairwoman cleared her throat. We've reviewed the testimony, the videos, and Rusty's history. Our decision is unanimous. Walter closed his eyes. Rusty will not be designated a dangerous dog, she said. We find that his bite was a defensive response to repeated provocation and direct physical harm. All euthanasia recommendations are revoked. For a second the words didn't land. Then the room exhaled as one. Walter sagged against the back of his chair, a sound halfway between a laugh and a sob escaping him. Luke's hand landed on his shoulder, firm and warm. However, the chairwoman continued, shooting a sharp look at Luke and Morrison both, this entire situation is a disgrace. Grown adults using social media like a weapon. Teenagers terrorizing citizens for entertainment. A community divided over a dog that behaved better than most of the humans involved. She turned to Tyler. You will complete 200 hours of community service at the very shelter you mocked. No social media accounts for the duration per juvenile court order. Violated and that number doubles. Tyler's mouth fell open. 200, what about my followers? Maybe you'll earn better ones, she said coolly. Morrison started to object, but she steamrolled him. You'll also pay all vet bills for the dog and hospital bills for Mr. Hayes. Consider it an education expense. As gavel met wood, the room buzzed. Melissa wiped her eyes. Jaden slumped with a kind of relieved defeat. Outside, the sun had finally broken through the clouds when Luke and Walter pulled into the animal control lot. The young tech met them at the door, eyes bright. You won, she said, grinning. They called 5 minutes ago. I was hoping. Rusty heard them before he saw them. The instant Luke said his name down the row, a frantic bark exploded from the back. Nails scrabbled on concrete. By the time the kennel door swung open, Rusty was a blur of brown fur and wagging tail. Walter dropped to his knees on the cold floor, not caring who saw. Rusty barreled into him, covering his face in desperate, sloppy licks, whining deep in his chest like he was apologizing for every moment apart. I'm here, boy, Walter choked. I'm here. You're okay. Luke crouched beside them, hand buried in Rusty's fur. The dog pressed his head into Luke's chest like he was trying to climb inside it. You did good, Luke whispered to him. You protected your family. That's all anyone can ask. Later, back at the apartment, Rusty sprawled across both their feet as if refusing to let either man out of his radius again. A news notification pinged. Local SWAT officer suspended after viral dog case cleared of wrongdoing. Luke opened it. The article was surprisingly fair. IA had completed their review quickly under public pressure, determining that while he'd broken some PR rules, his actions didn't warrant permanent discipline. Recommendation: reinstatement with a written warning. Walter read over his shoulder. So you get your badge back, he said softly. Looks that way, Luke replied. But I'm asking for fewer call-outs. More time here. Maybe we can move you closer to the city, or get you one of those in-home nurse visits. Walter snorted. I don't need a nurse. I've got a SWAT officer and a mutt who thinks he's a lion. Rusty thumped his tail in agreement. Luke's expression turned serious. Promise me something, Grandpa. Next time someone messes with you, you call me before the internet gets a vote. Walter met his gaze, shame and pride and gratitude all tangled up. Only if you promise something back, he said. Don't wait for things to calm down to come see me. Life doesn't work like that. Luke nodded, throat tight. Deal. That night, as the three of them sat on the sagging couch watching some dumb game show, Luke's phone buzzed with a new message. A stranger had written, "I was going to share a funny video of a homeless guy today. Then I saw what happened to your grandpa. I put my phone away and bought the man a meal instead." Luke looked at Walter, at Rusty's head in his lap, and felt something like peace settle over him. The world was still full of people who pointed cameras instead of hands. But for one old man and one brown shelter mutt, justice had landed where it belonged. And you, if you saw someone filming a person or an animal being hurt for laughs, would you be the one holding up a phone, or the one stepping in to stop it?